What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick, and welcome to another episode of Short Circuit Sports, the channel that brings you weekly, lightning-fast coverage of the sports world from a fan's perspective. I cover anything and everything from breaking news to scores and predictions with analysis to bringing guys anything that you might have missed in the world of sports. That being said, we got a lot going on in this episode. All three major American sports had something going on this past week. In the MLB, we just got the conclusion of the World Series. In the NBA, we got the first 2 weeks of the season under wraps. And in the first 2 weeks of the NBA season, we've already got a blockbuster trade. So you don't want to miss those details coming up. In the NFL, we got some Week 8 recap. The NFL trade deadline just came and went. And we also got my top 5 games to watch and look out for in the NFL for Week 9, along with their predictions. So you don't want to miss anything on that list. If you are not subscribed already, please subscribe, like the episode, turn on your notifications. It would really help me out. It would also really help the channel out, and I am sure that you would not regret it. So without further introduction, stay plugged in, stay charged up, and let's get into it. For the first time in franchise history, the Texas Rangers are officially your 2023 World Series champs. They defeated the Arizona Diamondbacks 4-1. Arizona really did everything in their power to try and make Game 5 competitive. Pitcher Zach Gallen was throwing a no-hitter through 7 innings. And unfortunately, that competitive effort would be for nothing. The Rangers would end up scoring 5 runs in 3 innings between the 7th and 9th inning to clinch the series. What was even more impressive about the Rangers was just how dominant they were on the road. In this postseason, they have set an MLB record for 11 wins on the road. Not only that, but they never lost on the road once. Let me repeat that. In this entire postseason, they never lost on the road a single time. Just pure dominance from a team that just a month ago lost out on a division title on the last game of the season. So that just really goes to show that any team in the postseason has a chance at making history. It's just about coming together at the right time and firing on all cylinders. And the Rangers have done that better than any team I can really think of recently to do it. So just a deserved title for the Rangers, and they should be a competitive team for years to come. In my last video, I talked about Texas phenom Adolis Garcia and just how he was the driving force behind the Rangers' offensive attack. He was setting records left and right for the Rangers, and I thought that if Texas were to win this World Series, it would be because of him and his continued offensive outburst, and I was wrong on that front. He got hurt relatively early on in this series. He was ruled out entirely, and in stepped Corey Seager, former Dodgers 2020 World Series MVP. For those of you that do not remember, that was the COVID year. He is one of the best hitters in all of baseball, and when the Rangers needed him most, he stepped up. In the World Series, Corey Seager batted 6 for 21 for a batting average of .285. He hit 3 home runs and drove in 6 RBIs and scored 6 times. That is why he is your 2023 World Series MVP. Sorry for the photo quality. I couldn't find a better photo. Making him the only player in MLB history to ever win World Series MVP in both the National League and now the American League. So just a great World Series production from one of the league's best, and I'm sure that he's going to continue this kind of level of production for years to come. Moving on to the NBA, this is where every team stands after the first 2 weeks in the season. Not a lot of surprise, at least for me, on either side of the standings. In the West, um, the defending champion Denver Nuggets sit at the top of this list. Nikola Jokic is Nikola Jokic, um, MVP caliber player, and he's playing like an MVP again this year. And they also have one of the best number two options in the league in Jamal Murray. So not a surprise to see the Nuggets there, along with the Warriors right behind them in second. In the East, it's pretty clear to me that the Boston Celtics, they either have a top 3 or top 2 starting 5 in the entire league. You could make the argument they have the best. You got Drew Holiday at point guard, Derek White at shooting guard, Jaylen Brown at small forward, Jason Tatum at power forward, and they've got Kristaps Porzingis now at center. I will say that they still have a few questions about their bench and their depth that they really need to answer, but they did just blow out the Indiana Pacers 155-104, so definitely raising some eyebrows there, and not a surprise to see that their offensive attack has basically led them to an undefeated start. One thing I will say before moving on is that if San Antonio Spurs rookie phenom Victor Wembanyama keeps playing like he has and putting up 30 a night, not only will he be a lock to win Rookie of the Year by the All-Star break, I wouldn't be sure to knock on the Spurs here. I think that they have a chance at making the playoffs. At least the play-in, especially if Victor keeps playing the way that he has. One player does not a team make, and basketball is a team game, but Victor could very well push the Spurs at least into the play-in if he keeps playing like he has. And watch out for the Spurs this year. I think they are very capable, very, very capable of being a Cinderella team this year. Moving on, for those of you that do not know, we got some Halloween breaking news earlier in the week. I believe for all of you East Coasters, this happened on Halloween morning at 2 a.m. From senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski, who reported that the Los Angeles Clippers have officially acquired 10-time All-Star James Harden from the Philadelphia 76ers. Harden officially gets his wish to be traded. For those of you that don't know, he was holding out. He did not get along with the Sixers front office, and he wasn't even going into the building. So the Sixers upgrade on the depth front, and they are free of the headache of Harden's holdout. The Clippers did give up a handful of expiring contracts in Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, and KJ Martin, and they also gave up a boatload of picks. It seems like these are the remainder of the Clippers picks for like the next 8 years. Here, I'll just back out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. The Clippers do acquire James Harden and PJ Tucker. Philip Petrusev was later traded to the Sacramento Kings, so he's no longer on the Clippers. And the Thunder were involved in this trade to the minuscule amount by giving the Clippers a first-round pick swap so that the Clippers could forward a first-rounder to the Sixers. On the Clippers side of things, Harden will be officially reunited with longtime friend and former teammate Russell Westbrook, and he will officially be in the same lineup as Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It'll be very interesting to see how all four of these guys play together. They are all ball-dominant players. They need the ball in their hands. But while there are a ton of skeptics about how these four players will work together, I'm going to say this. When the Clippers went on to sign Russell Westbrook at the end of last season, There were also skeptics about that move. He was coming off of a very, very terrible season with the Lakers, wasn't playing all that good, and when the Clippers signed him at the tail end of last season, he really went off in the playoffs and showed that he can be the starting point guard for this team. And I do have to say, if there's any coach capable of making adjustments on the fly, it is Ty Lue, coach of the Clippers. I will say that there are questions about Harden's work ethic. Those are deserved. He has forced his way out of multiple teams up till now, but I will say that this will probably be his final chance at a ring, and I don't think he wants to mess that up. He will not have a better supporting cast in the entire league than the team that he has currently around him, and he most likely will make his season debut with the Clippers next week. So I guess we will find out relatively soon if the Clippers will work out with him on offense or if they won't function with him in the mix. And this could very well be the move that either gives them a ring or completely blows them up. Up next, we got some NFL Week 8 recap. I did go 3-2 for my weekly picks. I was wrong about the Jaguars at the Steelers, as I thought the Steelers defense at home would be able to slow down the Jaguars' star offense. That was very quickly blown up by Jags running back Travis Etienne, who went off for 149 all-purpose yards and a touchdown, and Trevor Lawrence had a relatively efficient day through the air, throwing for over 290 yards and a touchdown. He did throw a pretty ugly interception early on, but that Steelers defense, Jaguars defense for once, stood up, forced 2 interceptions in crunch time, and holding the Steelers to a measly 10 points. The hot seat for Steelers offensive coordinator Matt Canada, at least for me, seemingly grows hotter as the weeks go on. The second game I was unable to properly predict were the Cincinnati Bengals at the San Francisco 49ers. In last week's video, I mentioned that the Niners had been undefeated at home so far in this season, and I thought that coming home after dropping 2 straight on the road would do the trick to get them back in the win column. And unfortunately, I did not take enough into account that the Bengals were coming off of a bye week and that it would give quarterback Joe Burrow some time to really get healthy. And he really showed how healthy he was in this game. He was ducking out of sacks and scrambling when he really needed to avoid pass rush like he used to do before he got hurt. And when he wasn't running, he was sitting cool in the pocket and throwing dimes to star receiver and favorite target Ja'Marr Chase. It really is one thing to throw for over 280 yards and 3 touchdowns in the NFL, but it's another thing to do it against arguably one of the league's top defenses in the Niners. The Bengals have now officially won 3 straight and are one of the league's hottest teams. And the Niners have seemingly hit a wall and really need to regroup quickly if they have any hope of contending in a competitive NFC West. As you will see later in this video, I believe they just did. One of the first games I called correctly was the New York Jets at the New York Giants. I am not going to say much about this game. It was a train wreck offensively. I will say that both teams' defenses had a really good game. The Jets arguably have the best defense in the league, and the Giants have actually really impressed me with how well their defensive personnel have played this year. So it was a very sloppy game offensively from both sides, and I thought that the Jets would win by a field goal, and that is precisely what happened here. The second game I correctly called was the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Washington Commanders in Washington. In my last video, I mentioned how both of these teams play, when they're under the same roof, they play each other very, very well. It's always a tight game when they play. And if you remember at the beginning of the season, the Commanders took the Eagles to overtime. And if you remember back to last season, Washington was the team they were the team to blow up the Eagles' bid for a perfect season. So the Commanders play the Eagles very well. And unfortunately for them in this game, it was a losing strategy to let Jalen Hurts throw for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Definitely not a way. You're not going to win a game when you let a quarterback do that. The third and final game I correctly called was the Dallas Cowboys beating the Los Angeles Rams in Dallas. Dak Prescott, quarterback for the Cowboys, he is slowly starting to prove doubters wrong. I still think that he has some questions about about his production against top-level teams in the league, but he proceeded to go off for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in this game. So you can't erase doubts in everybody, but that's certainly a good way to start. Star receiver CeeDee Lamb hauled in 12 receptions for over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Rams defense really couldn't do anything against this Cowboys aerial attack, and this game was pretty much over after 2 quarters and couldn't do anything after the half. Moving on, the NFL trade deadline came and passed, and some teams seemingly got better. First off, the San Francisco 49ers, like I mentioned before, made a move to boost their defensive front by trading for 2020 Defensive Rookie of the Year, Chase Young, from the Washington Commanders for a 3rd pick. An already dominant Niners defensive line somehow manages to get better. They pair college teammates Chase Young and Nick Bosa together from the Ohio State University. Which seems almost unfair. And then you realize what really is unfair is that you now add Chase Young to a defense that has Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and probably one of the best linebackers in the game, Fred Warner. So after dropping 3 straight, the Niners really needed a move to try and juice up that team and get them back on the right track, and this move certainly did that. You couldn't have done much better than this one. Another Washington defender was dealt at the deadline as the Commanders traded defensive end Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears for a 2nd-round pick. Not a whole lot to say about this one. The Bears' defense has been notoriously bad this year. They really needed to upgrade that pass rush. They got one of the better defensive ends available at the deadline. On the flip side, the Commanders are loading off some of their talent for some draft capital, and you can't do much better than a 2nd-round pick, and they're going to try and improve for the future. Moving on to one of the biggest moves of the deadline, the Arizona Cardinals ended up trading quarterback Joshua Dobbs to the Minnesota Vikings. Unfortunately for the Vikings, they did lose starting quarterback Kirk Cousins to a season-ending Achilles injury. He will be out for the year. They bring in Dobbs, who hasn't been the greatest, but he hasn't been the worst quarterback, and he wasn't the worst quarterback option available at the deadline. They're going to try and compete in that NFC North. They are only 2 games back of the Detroit Lions for that 1st-place spot. And to call it quits with so much time left in the season would be a waste of time and talent, at least for me. This potentially could do wonders for the Vikings offense if Dobbs works out. On the flip side of that, the Cardinals weren't going anywhere anytime quickly. They are getting star quarterback Kyler Murray back at some point this year. And they gain a 6th-round pick for the trouble. So we'll see where the Vikings go from here, and the Cardinals are continuing to tank. The next big move at the deadline was the Seattle Seahawks acquiring Pro Bowl D lineman Leonard Williams from the New York Giants. The Seahawks are very much alive in that NFC West. They did just overtake the 49ers for that first place spot. But if they want to stay there, they needed to make some moves, and they couldn't have done much better than Leonard Williams. They upgrade that defensive front. Seemed like a smart thing to do. On the other side of that trade, the New York Giants acquire a future 2nd round and a future 5th round pick in order to try and rebuild their roster. The Giants aren't going anywhere anytime quickly right now, same as the Cardinals, and they are going to continue to offload big-time contracts in order to rebuild. Next on the list is probably my most underrated trade at the deadline, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles acquiring 2-time All-Pro safety Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans. The Eagles have been facing a lot of injuries in that defense, especially on the secondary front. So they shore up the back end of that defense. They have been giving up a lot of points recently. Most recently, they gave up 31 to the Commanders. Having the stability of Byard kind of has me thinking that the Eagles' defense is back in business. On the other side of that trade, the Titans receive a future 5th and 6th round pick alongside safety Terrell Edmunds. Now that the Titans have figured out their quarterback situation, they are going with rookie Will Levis. It's kind of evident that Tennessee is going to try and build around him and rebuild for the future, and that is precisely what they are doing here. The last real big trade of the deadline was the Buffalo Bills acquiring veteran corner Rasul Douglas and a future 5th round pick from the Green Bay Packers in exchange for a 3rd round pick. Buffalo is attempting to stabilize their secondary, especially with season-ending injury sustained by star corner Tre'Davious White. This adds a much-needed boost to the Bills' defense. They do have to deal with that high-powered Miami offense in that division, and the Jets could potentially be getting Aaron Rodgers back at some point this season, so the Bills really needed to shore up that secondary. And they got one of the better corner options available. On the other side of that trade, the Packers really are looking to the future to try and build a competitive roster from the ground up. I don't know if they are completely sold on quarterback Jordan Love. So they're going to continue to rebuild, stack up that draft capital, and they're probably just going to play the waiting game and see how Jordan Love grows. Moving on to the NFL Week 9 installment of Nick's Picks. I'm officially 22-9 for the year. I give you my top 5 games to watch for this week, along with their predictions. Just so that you can see the full screen. The first game that I have at number 5, I have the Los Angeles Chargers going into New York and just barely scraping by the New York Jets. The Jets arguably have the best defense in the NFL, but with their shortcomings on offense and the high-powered potential of Justin Herbert, I think the Chargers could very well get out of here with a win, barring a second-half collapse that we all know that they are very capable of doing. So it is in New York. I think it's going to be tight, but I think the Chargers have just enough to scrape by with a win. At my number 4 game, I have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Buffalo Bills at home by a field goal. As I mentioned before, the Bengals have probably been the hottest team in the NFL, and being at home, I think it would take a really strong defensive effort to really cool them off. And unfortunately for the Bills, I don't think they have the defensive talent for that undertaking. So, Cincinnati by 3. At number 3, I have the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Dallas Cowboys in Philly by 3. I do think that the Cowboys offense has started to get into a pretty solid rhythm. Unfortunately, I think that the Phillies offense just continues to roll. They're just way too good on that side of the ball. Jalen Hurts is playing like the MVP talent that he is. And considering that it is in Philly, I have to give the edge to the Eagles here. I don't think that the Cowboys defense, while they are solid, I don't think they have I think that Jalen Hurts has just enough to get them by in this one. At my number 2 game, I have the Baltimore Ravens beating the Seattle Seahawks in Baltimore. Other than the Bengals and the Eagles, you really could make the argument that the Ravens are the hottest team in the NFL. They have won 4 of their last 5 games, and star quarterback Lamar Jackson is firmly set in that MVP discussion. I do think that this game will come down to defense and which personnel is capable of stopping the other team's run game. I think Baltimore just has way too much on their side of the ball for the Seahawks to handle, especially with Lamar Jackson healthy and playing the way that he has. A quick little, just a little quick tidbit here. Lamar Jackson has only lost 1 game against an NFC opponent in his entire career. His complete record against the NFC, 17-1. So, if history is on his side here, I have the Ravens pulling off a pretty good one here against the Seahawks. At number 1, to absolutely no one's surprise, I have the Germany game at number 1 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the high-powered Miami Dolphins. I have the Chiefs scraping by a field goal. I do think that this game could go either way. I really think that it comes down to which team can handle the new country difference. This will be the first ever game in Germany. Nobody in the NFL knows how to play there, so we'll see how it goes with that. I also think it comes down to which team can limit their mistakes the most, and I think that head coach Andy Reid, he's got the experience. I think he'll have the Chiefs ready to play in this one. And also, that being said, when it comes to close games, the Chiefs have, for lack of better words, they have a very interesting knack for pulling out wins at the last second. And that's why I'm picking them to win here. I think both offenses show out in this one. If there is a game on for the rest of the season that has a chance at being a major shootout, it is this one. So let me know down in the comments who's actually going to be awake for this game. Who's going to be awake and actually willing to watch this game. It's going to be a tough one to be awake for. I believe that kickoff is at 6 or 6:30. So let me know down in the comments if who do you think is going to win? Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree? Let me know. That being said, that is all the time that we have left for this episode. If you like this episode, please give me a like, subscribe even, turn on your notifications, and I'll talk to you next time. Yeah, so stay plugged in, stay charged up, and I will see you guys on the next episode of Short Circuit Sports. Have a good one. Peace.